Hey folks, this is Ask Mark Joyner, episode number 2, where you get to ask me anything you want live. All right, you guys, I don't know again if this is going to be the right time of day to do this. Actually, you know what? I don't have my lapel mic on today, so I don't know what the sound is like here in this slightly echoey room. Again, this is number 2. Still kind of getting my my sea legs here, learning how to do this. I want you guys to ask me questions, okay? So whether you're watching this on YouTube or Periscope or Facebook or wherever, go ahead and type in a question, and I will probably see it. Fingers crossed if all the tech is working right. Now, while I'm waiting for questions to roll in, and I don't even know if any questions are going to roll in because this is Sunday night for most of you guys. It's Monday morning for me. Maybe y'all got other things going on Sunday night, but it'd be lovely if we could spend your Sunday evening together answering your questions about business, about life, about persuasion, about psychology, about propaganda, about any darn thing that you know I can talk about. I'm more than happy to answer any question you've got. I am an open book. Now, to roll this off, though, I'm going to give you guys a question that I got from a little relative of mine, this little girl who I'm very, very proud of. She is just an absolute ninja of a person. She is working her tail off in the #1 high school in the country right now. She got in, and she is doing amazingly well. She asked me, she said, "Uncle Mark, what do I do about motivation?" She's having a hard time. She's feeling a little bit burned out because she has never had to work this hard before in her life. And I'll tell you what I told her, okay? Now, by the way, guys, as I'm talking here, I want to see more of your questions. If I don't have any questions, I'm just going to stop and figure out maybe there's a better time of day to do this. Again, this is brand new for me, so I got to figure out when is the best time of day to do it. How do I get more engagement? How do I get more people involved? Figuring these things out. But anyway, let's talk about what I said for my little niece. First thing I asked her, I said, well, what do you desire? What do you desire? And I pointed out to her, I said, look, we don't have any trouble being motivated to do the things that we really, really strongly desire. So for example, if her mom had been baking some chocolate chip cookies down in the kitchen, and she called her and said, "Hey, come down and get some cookies." I said, "Would you have to muster up any motivation to go do that?" And she said, you know, that's a really important point. You know, I hadn't considered that. But her objection was that, you know, she doesn't have that kind of desire for her schoolwork and the tremendous load that she's under right now. So what does she do? Well, the trick to that is that you have got to chain these things together. So maybe she doesn't want to go to school right now, but what is school enabling for her in the future? That's the real question. So, you know, I said, well, look, you know, you got to find out, and I'm not going to get too deeply into her personal motivations, but, you know, I said, you got to find out, what is it, you know, why are you going to school at all? What is it that you want to become later on? And if you can chain those things together, it's a pretty miraculous way of transferring that motivation that you feel for that thing you want in the future and associating it with whatever you're experiencing right now. So in her case, you know, every time she goes in to class and then she is not enjoying the class and she's trying to figure out, like, how do I get the motivation to do the homework? All she's got to do is project herself into the future and say, well, this is what I want to become, and doing my homework right now in the moment is going to enable me to become this thing off in the future. And that's basically it. If you can do that, and then if you can remember that over and over and over again, you are going to become more and more motivated, and you're eventually going to get to a point where you associate that motivation with the thing that you want to become with the really hard work that you have to do to achieve that. And another thing that you got to do is you've got to kind of reframe what hard work means in your mind. So for a lot of folks, they think, well, I'm just going to get through this hard work so I can have this enjoyment. But what I think you've got to do is you've got to reprogram your mind so that instead of associating hard work with something that you have to get past, turn hard work into something that you revere in itself, because that hard work is what makes you good. It's what makes you stronger, right? It's what makes you a better person. So instead of avoiding it, maybe you should be seeking it out. Now, I don't see any questions on my Restream little prompt here, so I'm going to check on Facebook and see if maybe there's anybody on Facebook that is asking me a question. You're going to have to bear with me here, guys. Again, I'm still learning this new stuff here and figuring out how to make this format work. Let me see if anybody has come in on Facebook that is not showing up on the Restream prompt. To give me a minute here. I don't see any questions. All right, well, if that's the case, guys, if there are no questions, I'm going to shut this down. Apparently, I think I need to do this at a better time of day so that I can get more live participation. So, hey, I got a good morning from Barry Page there. Barry, if you've got any questions, go ahead and feel free to ask. Maybe you're the one who will get this kicked off here and going. I know last time you asked some awesome questions. And I know I got a lot of questions from people via comments, and you know, I told them, I said, hey, come in live and ask me those questions live. But I think maybe what I need to do is when y'all are asking me questions via comments or in private messages, what I will do is I will print those out and have those ready to go, so that in case y'all aren't seeing me live, I can answer those questions. And that way, no matter what, when I do these Ask Mark Joyner things, I will always have something to talk about. Okay, we got some. Okay, Barry's telling me wait. He's gonna ask a question. All right, we got a good Virginia Dewan, and Virginia is absolute ninja of a person who used to work with me at the old ESOP Marketing Corporation. So if you guys know the old stories about the stuff when we were inventing the tracking pixel, launching the first ebook publishing company, launching the first online ad tracking company, Virginia Dewan was one of the folks there along with us, her and her wonderful husband James, who the two of them met at ESOP long ago, and absolutely fantastic people. I'm glad to see Verge hanging out here. So Verge says, to paraphrase Will Wheaton, aka acting Ensign Crusher, do something that your future self will thank you for. Absolutely right, and great thing to bring up. Okay, here. I see some good friends in here chiming in. All right, so Virginia asks, all right, I gotta get this, okay, here we go. I think I got this lined up now so I can see everything you guys are asking. Verge asks, as a prolific writer, how do you get over writing fatigue, especially on topics you have been writing for a super long time? Okay, Verge, let me ask a clarification about that, because there's two possible answers. That's a fantastic question. So are you asking about writing fatigue in the moment when you know, you're actually writing, or are you talking about the fact that, like, hey, I've written on this topic so many times I don't want to write on it anymore? Let me know which of those two you mean, but I'll give you an answer for both. So in the moment, for me, it's a number of things. First off, the base foundational thing to have stamina for writing is the same kind of stamina that you need to have for pretty much anything, and that goes down to basic health habits. If you're not getting a good night's sleep every night, if you're not getting sun every day, if you're not getting sun in the morning, you know, at sunrise time, if you're not drinking enough water, if you're not eating healthy food, if you don't have your stress levels managed, and I know for you with an army of kids, you got you got to manage your stress levels, or something probably hard to manage, full stop. And not being a father, I can't really speak to that. But you got to get all that stuff dialed in, because if those things are not dialed in, you will not have stamina for writing. You will not have stamina for anything at all. Now, the other thing that I do is I will push to get myself into a positive state before I write. Now, Ted Nicholas and Verge, I think you remember Ted Nicholas. He was a speaker at one of the events we organized together back in ESOP. You may remember that he used to do this really funny ritual. He had a list of about 20 different affirmations, and I was just telling a buddy, Thomas Engberts, about this yesterday, in fact. he had these 20 affirmations, and he would say stuff like, I will write with honesty and passion, yes. And it looks funny with a 70-year-old man doing that, but I tell you what, the guy has sold billions with a B, dollars worth of products and services with his copywriting. So this guy knows a thing or two about what it takes to write. That is one way to generate the energy that you need to be able to write. Now, another thing is you need to get into a good, healthy position for your body when you write. So for me, I do a combination of a standing desk, and in fact, right now, my computer is sitting on a portable standing desk. It's actually a metallic music keyboard stand that I have converted into propping my laptop on, and I can adjust it so that it has about the right height for me. Your elbows need to be about parallel, and then I have it slightly down like this so I can be looking down at it without putting my head too far forward. Now, ideally, your standing desk should have the monitor up about here, but if you're using a laptop and you got to be portable, that's hard to do. So a portable standing desk like this works out pretty well for me. And then I combine that with this thing I have called the Perfect Chair. Now, that's something you guys can Google. It's something that a company, I believe, called Human Touch puts together. I've had probably about 4 of those in my lifetime now. I just bought a brand new one here in Thailand because it is absolutely wonderful for keeping my body in a healthy position as I write. So instead of sitting down, which shortens your hamstrings and causes all kinds of lower back problems and whatnot as a result, this Perfect Chair puts you in a nice, comfortable, relaxed position. So I won't do a full recline in the Perfect Chair. I'll do about half. There's a little, anyway, I'm gonna film this and show this to you guys at some point here coming up to show you exactly how I use it. But I kick back in that, and it's got memory foam in it, by the way, so it feels really good when you're on it. And then I put my laptop on my desk and I just go, and I can sit in that thing for hours and hours and hours, and that helps with the fatigue as well. And another thing is to make sure you stay hydrated. Another thing I do, so I do intermittent fasting. Okay, now this isn't for everybody. Not everybody has the willpower to do this, and it's much easier to do intermittent fasting when you're on keto. But here's why this helps with my writing. I haven't had anything to eat today. I'm not going to eat anything until much later tonight. Okay, after my training, then I will eat, and I'm going to eat only one meal. Why? Because if my energy is not wasted in digestion, I have more energy to do other things. Now, if you're not keto adapted, it's going to be very, very hard to intermittent fast. If you are keto adapted, your body is burning ketones instead of glucose to get the ATP that your cells need to run all of the biological processes in your body. So that means that because I'm keto adapted, if I don't eat, well, my body says, okay, I just need to burn some fat, and then I'm going to turn that fat into fuel, and that way I don't feel hungry. Now, if I were not keto adapted and I were relying on glucose, intermittent fasting would be very hard because I would be having all these ups and downs, these energy spikes and dips. All right, so keto adaptation along with intermittent fasting has helped me tremendously as well with my energy levels for writing and for just about everything else too. Verge, I hope that answers your question. And by the way, your writing is getting better and better and better. Every time I see stuff that you write, you're always getting better with the stuff that you're writing, and keep it up. And I totally respect the raw honesty that you put in your writing as well. To me, that's the only kind of writing that really matters. Because otherwise, what are we doing? We're bullshitting, and nobody needs to read bullshit. Okay. All right. Barry Page asks, okay, so related to health, actually, how are you finding the carnivore diet? Any negatives you've experienced? Okay, so somebody finally asked me about the carnivore diet. I'm going to talk to you all about it. Now, first off, I don't necessarily recommend the carnivore diet to anyone. I am doing this as an experiment. I did it because I've heard of a lot of people who are resolving their autoimmune conditions with it. I've had gut issues my whole life, ever since I was a very, very young man. I think from the age I was around 12, I had problems with my gut, and it's been diagnosed as all sorts of things, from ulcers to this kind of IBS or whatever. And frankly, I don't know if I believe any of these different diagnoses, because I don't think we fully understand what's going on with people's guts yet. We're still learning a tremendous amount about how enormously complex the microbiome is and the relationship between the microbiome and our neurotransmitters and so many other really, really interesting things. Now, with all that said, also I was diagnosed with some arthritic condition in my shoulders before as well, and I was told by doctors that I will never have healthy digestion again. I have to take anti-inflammatory drugs, and I was also told that I have to be on non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs for my arthritis, which, by the way, all of these things now we're starting to discover what they call autoimmune conditions. Well, guess what? I didn't stop exercising like they told me. I'm actually working out much harder now. I'm much fitter now as a result, not necessarily completely due to the carnivore diet. We're going to get to that in a second. My stomach problems are doing a lot better now as well. I don't take the anti-inflammatory drugs that the medical community tells me that I need to be on, because after doing my own research on these things, I came to the conclusion that those things are going to be causing me more harm than good. They don't know how to cure most of these autoimmune conditions yet, and what they are doing is they are masking the symptoms with a lot of these drugs, and I think they are actually causing a lot more problems as a result. So I turned to the carnivore diet. Now, I'm a guy who has tried all sorts of radically different diets. I did veganism 2 times in my life. I was a lacto-ovo vegetarian for 1 year when I was in the Army. And then a few years ago, this is around, I think around part of 2012 to 2013, I was what is known as an 80-10-10 raw vegan for about an entire year. Now, neither time worked out for me very well. And in fact, the 80-10-10 one was the one that triggered off probably the worst state of my gut that I have been fighting for years since then. After, I think 80-10-10 may have actually broken my gut worse than it was before. So again, there are some people out there who swear by that diet, who seem to be doing okay, but my general sense is that it's actually harming a lot of people. I think veganism is actually harming a lot of people. I seriously question the scientific case that people are presenting for it. I think, I've gone through a lot of the literature. I've read, and guys, if you're a vegan, please don't bombard me with all of your research and all of that. I've read it. Okay, I've read the China study. I know McDougall. I know all those other guys. I've read their books. I've done a deep dive into PubMed. I've looked at those things. I am not convinced that their evidence is sound. Okay, there is a wide body of evidence that people use to support that, but many of these studies I have found are significantly flawed. For example, the evidence that people will present saying that meat is bad for you doesn't distinguish between grass-fed and grain-fed beef. It doesn't distinguish between beef that was raised naturally and stuff that was raised in a CAPO. CAPO is a commercial animal farming operation. Okay, those little horrible stalls that they cram these animals in, where they pump them full of hormones and all this stuff. Is that stuff going to be bad for you? Maybe. If you're eating stuff that's pumped full of hormones and eating that's been eating grains that have been laden with pesticides, is that stuff going to be bad for you? I would think so. Probably. Is that going to affect your body differently from the meat from a cow that was raised naturally eating grass, that didn't get hormonal injections, that wasn't exposed to pesticides in the same way? I don't think we can compare these things. These are apples and oranges. Okay. Plus, I think we need to do a much deeper dive into science in general, by the way, into the science of food than we have so far. I am not satisfied with any of the research that I've seen to this point. Now, with that said, it's a big, long build-up to carnivore, all right? I tried carnivore because I heard a lot of anecdotal cases of people curing their autoimmune conditions with a carnivore diet, and there is actually a clinic in Hungary that is dedicated exclusively to the carnivore diet and is getting reportedly excellent success with treating autoimmune conditions with the carnivore diet. Dr. Sean Baker, who is a tremendously good athlete, has been doing the carnivore diet for a full 2 years now. Now, a lot of the vegans will criticize him and say, well, look at his blood work. He's got low testosterone. Okay, is that really your evidence? When the guy just broke a world record on the Concept 2 rower, and he is at 52 years of age, is deadlifting 500 pounds, you're going to tell me that your argument about how that guy being unhealthy is the fact that his testosterone numbers are low? I think maybe we're just not interpreting the numbers correctly, right? Maybe that number doesn't always correlate the same way with performance the way we think it does. Or maybe it's conditional, right? One of the things I like to tell people is that causality is not binary, it's multivariate. Okay, so it's possible that when you are on a carnivore diet, maybe you need less testosterone, maybe you can function well. The fact is, if you examine the man's performance, he's obviously doing extremely well, and he is obviously an extremely intelligent man who has a lot of very profoundly important observations about health and diet. Okay, so looking at all of that, and again, recognizing that formal studies are definitely superior to anecdotal evidence, but remember, formal studies are corruptible. The peer review system is frankly broken. A lot of studies are paid for by interest groups to come up with conclusions, predetermined conclusions to support their particular agendas. Okay, and sometimes scientists, because they're human, like to fudge data to support their hypotheses because they know it's going to get them recognition, it's going to get them tenure, it's going to get them all of these different things. Okay, so we have to take formal studies with a grain of salt as well. It's not as incorruptible as most of us think. So that means we have to go to bro science sometimes. It means we have to go to anecdote sometimes. It means we have to go to clinical evidence sometimes. Okay, there is a spectrum of evidence out there. Now, the evidence that I trust the most for myself is how I feel and how I perform. And I'm sorry, but I perform way, way better now on the carnivore diet than I did even on keto. So when I did keto, and I was combining it with Wim Hof breathing, I resolved my gut problems pretty well for a little while, but they came back. And then when I switched over to carnivore, I saw a great reduction in symptoms, far greater than I experienced even on keto. And a lot of people hypothesize that it's the elimination of vegetables that's causing this. Perhaps it's only for some people. Perhaps there's bioindividuality. Maybe my gut biome is broken in some way that I don't have the intestinal flora required to process these things correctly. That's possible. That's one hypothesis. There's so many different possibilities of what's going on here. It's possible that this is a temporary thing for me that's going to allow me to resolve my gut problems, but maybe eventually over the long term I need to switch over to a more normal diet. I don't know, but I'm willing to experiment and find out, and I'm willing to listen to my own body. Okay, that's it. And I don't care about anybody's judgment about the diet. Okay, a lot of people are going to say, well, that's a crazy diet. Well, I'm sorry, suffering with the condition that I had in my gut, that's the crazier thing than switching over to eating meat. Now, if people are going to moralize about veganism, by the way, I'll say one more thing about that. Do we need to go tell all the animals in the wild that are carnivorous to stop eating other animals because it's immoral to eat other animals, even though they are designed to be eating those things? Do we know whether or not the human body is designed to be herbivorous or omnivorous or carnivorous? I've heard arguments across the spectrum for that, and there are arguments that are valid for all three of those different perspectives. Okay, so none of us really know. None of us really know, all right? But what I do know is how this diet is affecting me now, and I know that it's affecting me very well, and I'm going to stick on it until it stops working, okay? Because it's the best thing I've done so far to heal my gut. Now, let me address one more thing about carnivore diet that a lot of people ask. They say, well, you're going to get nutritional deficiencies. Obviously, don't you remember the stories of all the sailors who went out there and got scurvy, and then we cured the scurvy by supplementing their diets with fruit? Yeah, that is a historical account that everybody has heard. But here's the way the carnivore guys address that. None of us are getting scurvy. None of the guys who are on the carnivore diet are getting scurvy. I don't have scurvy. I got pretty darn good teeth. I'm in pretty darn good shape all around, especially for my age. Okay, well, their hypothesis is that perhaps The fiber that you're eating in the diet, if you're eating a normal diet, increases the body's requirements for vitamin C, and that if you're not eating fiber, you need much less. The fact of the matter is, I don't have scurvy. None of the guys who are eating the carnivore diet are getting scurvy. So do with that information as you will. Make your own informed decision. Guys, I do a lot of radical things for my body that a lot of formal medical doctors, especially in the United States, would disagree with. I get sun on my skin without sunblock every single day at peak sun. I've been doing that for years. I don't have skin cancer. I have pretty darn good skin all up. Actually, my skin has gotten healthier as a result of doing that. I feel healthier as a result of doing that. Am I advising you to do that? No, I'm advising you to think for yourself, to go in there and dig into the medical journals yourself. They're not that hard to understand once you get in there and dig in, okay? And don't just rely on the abstract of a scientific study. The abstracts are often very misleading, and especially don't rely on the scientific journalism, because what the scientific journalists do is they read the abstract without actually reading the science, without understanding the data that often does not support the conclusion that the researcher is trying to pimp out in the abstract. Well, these journalists will read the abstract, and then they will come up with a clickbaity headline that is not supported even by the abstract. Okay, so you need to educate yourself. You need to understand statistics. You need to understand how to dig in and read a scientific paper. Okay, most of it you're not going to understand. There are going to be terms of art in there that you do not understand. All right? It's going to take time. It's like the way I educated myself about Shakespeare. Now, I'm a largely self-taught guy in my life. I self-taught myself how to read scientific papers. I self-taught myself how to read Shakespeare. When I first read Shakespeare, it was hard. It was really hard, man, because even though it's still technically modern English, there's a lot of stuff in there that you need a concordance for. You need those footnotes. But after a while, I started to understand it, and thank God I took the time to do that, because Shakespeare has enriched my life perhaps more than any other literature I've ever read. And understanding scientific journals, scientific papers, has liberated me in some profoundly important ways, because it means that I am not beholden to the opinions of people who are trying to tell me how to think about something. Journalists like to get up there and say, we'll do the thinking for you. Fuck that. Pardon my language, anybody's offended by that, but that deserves a fuck that. Okay, if anything in this life does, it's that. You need to learn how to think about these things for yourself. All right, let me get into here to some more questions. My apologies for a long rant on that, guys, but man, it deserves a long rant. Okay, so Verge says, the second one, writing so many pieces on a similar topic. How do you approach the same topic from multiple angles, especially if you've written about it for years? That is a damn good question too, Verge. All right, so here's the way I look at it. Start thinking in terms of metaphors and stories, okay? Can you come up with new metaphorical ways to express the same idea? Can you come up with new stories to express the same idea? As a copywriter, I'm faced with this all the time, because I've got to sell Simpleology all the time. I've got to come up with new ways to sell Simpleology. Now, one way we do that is we come up with new entry ways to introduce people into Simpleology. But sometimes I say, well, you know what? I want to tell the same thing again, but now I'm going to come up with a new story. And here's where your imagination is going to kick in, Verge. You're a very creative person. I know that extremely well from having worked together. Just let your imagination run. Can you concoct a story? And you can concoct it whole cloth. It can be totally fictitious that makes the point you're trying to make. Or do you have a story from your life that you can share? Or can you come up with a new simile or metaphor? Those things will give you a limitless number of ways to express the same thing over and over again. And I think it's very important that you express the same thing in different ways over and over again, because sometimes it requires a different way to get into someone's mind. Okay. All right, let's see here. Nathan asks, wow, I have several friends doing carnivore. I like keto so much I'd like to try, but I have none of the issues carnivore really excels alleviating. Then, experiment with it or don't, man. I can't recommend any of these things. All I can do is report to y'all what works for me. And I'm not going to censor myself in telling you what I believe has worked for me. And by the way, sometimes again, if causality is multivariate and not binary, it's possible that other changes in my life may have been responsible for some of these improvements, right? I'll tell you one really interesting note on that, by the way. So I was living in Manila for a little while, and I just moved out here to Phuket, Thailand, with my buddies, my great buddies, Mitch and Mac. And the air is way better out here. Well, I'll tell you, I have observed going back and forth from Manila that every time I go into Manila, my gut gets worse. And every time I leave Manila, my gut feels better. I think there's something going on there with the pollution or the stress levels or maybe the EMF pollution that makes it an inhospitable environment, at least for me. And by the way, I think this is probably a global problem that we all need to address. I think that when we have pollution in our environments, we are limiting human potential for every single person on the planet. And that is an absolute mission critical thing that we need to resolve. All right. Okay, thanks for all the kind words and hellos, guys. All right, so Barry asks, thanks for the answer. Solid advice. I'm testing nothing but 1 kilogram of beef each day for the next 2 weeks. Should be fun. Barry, I want to point out something about this. One thing that a lot of the guys on carnivore have observed is that it might take up to 90 days to really feel the results. In the first 30 days, you might see an alleviation of symptoms, and then in the 60 days, you might see some more intense healing. And then in the 60 to 90 days, you might start to feel more optimal. And again, this is I'm relaying something anecdotal here, right? These are the guys who are doing just beef, all beef. It's a tough ask to ask somebody to do that for 90 days. But if you do have that kind of problem, it might be worth trying out. It has certainly been worthwhile for me. All right, thanks for the kind words, guys. And it's great to interact across different platforms here on this. I don't know if I'm getting the YouTube questions fast enough, by the way. The guys at Restream say that the Facebook questions come fast. The stuff on Periscope and YouTube is a little bit slower. But anyway, we're going to keep optimizing this and making this much better. All right, Alexander says, I just started keto about 2 months ago, and so much of the inflammation I had has gone down. Good for you, bud. Listen, guys, don't be afraid to experiment with diets. I think that might be the last question we've got so far, so maybe this is a good point to end on for today. But something I want to point out, it's a historical observation, all right? We used to have this thing called the 4 food groups, and then we had the food pyramid, and I don't know what it is they're trying to pass off on us now, but every time they come out with this, the government is trying to tell us, well, this is what your healthy diet you should be eating is. For the longest time, they were telling us, that cholesterol straight up is bad, but then we started to distinguish between HDL and LDL. And now we know that some cholesterols are actually healthy for us. If you're eating grass-fed beef, for example, the omega-3 ratios are much higher than the omega-6. Totally changes the way it affects your body, right? So for me, I don't really care about the government's recommendations on what I should be eating because I don't believe that those things are coming from the right place. And I think even sometimes there's probably some corruption going on there. Again, this sounds conspiratorial, but I'm open to the notion that maybe people in the grain industry are paying somebody in the FDA off to say, hey, advise people to eat lots of grains. Okay, there are a lot of people now that are presenting a very strong case for the fact that maybe grains are actually super bad for us, right? Maybe the anti-nutrients, the protease inhibitors in grains and beans and whatnot are not so good for us after all. And maybe there's a difference between the grains that we're eating now and the heirloom grains, right? So, we have been genetically modifying a lot of the foods that we're eating now. People will come out there and will tell you that GMOs are proven safe. I call bullshit. There's nothing proven safe in science because to prove something is safe, it means you have to have a completely omniscient data set of everything that we can possibly know, and you have to be able to bounce that information against that complete data set. Well, we don't have a complete data set. Even with what we know to observe, we have not made all of the observations, but there are things that we don't even know yet that we can observe, that we haven't even discovered yet. So I don't know if you guys have heard me talk about nanomaterials, but we're starting to discover now that the periodic table is not all there is to chemistry, right? If you don't know about that, Google graphene, Google the nanomaterial revolution, all right? The world is changing radically right now in front of our very, very eyes. We are learning things that we don't even know about. So for someone to come out and make a statement like GMOs are proven safe, prima facie, that is a bullshit statement. No, in my estimation, no intelligent scientist would ever say something is proven safe because epistemologically, it's not a valid statement. Okay, I got another question here from Mitch. Hey, bud. He says, how much experimentation do you do with WOM evidence for increasing energy levels or decreasing burnout? What do you mean by WOM, by the way? Mitch, can you follow up on that? You're the last question right now, so if I hear from you quick, I can squeeze in an answer to that. I know WOM is word of mouth. Is that what you mean? Are you just talking about like bro science? Hopefully Mitch will reply here quickly. WOM evidence. I'm trying to figure out what he means. Mitch, I hope I hope he's still here. I want to know what he means. Word of mouth. Okay. Well, it depends. Okay. First off, if I hear something word of mouth, I'm going to consider the source. For example, the great Paul Chek says, everybody who preaches health should do so with their shirt off. I'm almost there. Maybe I'll do that one of these days just to show y'all that, I think y'all can tell that I'm pretty fit. If somebody is not healthy, I'm going to take their advice with a grain of salt. By the way, I get tons of advice from unhealthy people on how strange my dietary patterns are, right? I got to find that quite amusing. So that's number one. And then the second thing is I'm going to ask, did they actually experiment with this themselves, or are they just hearing something secondhand? Now, the third thing is what is the volume of that word of mouth anecdotal evidence? Are there a lot of people out there reporting it? And is that volume of people AstroTurf, or is it real people? You got to find out. If you guys don't know what AstroTurf is, Google that. And I'm not talking about the stuff they have on the football fields. I'm talking about the phenomenon where people are going in and manipulating the results of Google and manipulating the social media conversations to create impressions. Guys, that is a real thing. If you haven't seen Susan Atkinson's TEDx talk about that, go check that out, guys. And I can tell you, as a guy who has consulted for people who have tried to manipulate the media, it's a real phenomenon. It's really going on. It's how governments are doing it, corporations are doing it, interest groups are doing it. Not everything you read on the internet is legit. And by the way, Google is sometimes shaping the search results for political agendas. There's a tremendous body of evidence to support that's going on as well. And anyway, that's a whole big can of worms. But there's my thought on that, Mitch. I think you have to get information from as many sources as possible, but you can't trust any one source. And let me tell you one thing about that from the perspective of being a former military intelligence guy. Okay, in the military intelligence community, we don't rely on one single source of information. We get corroborating sources of information. And depending on the quality of the source and the multiplicity of the sources, we get greater or lesser degrees of certainty about what that is. And by the way, when you have to use that information to decide whether or not you were going to send a drone strike somewhere or attack a particular target, it's very, very important to corroborate that information from as many, many different sources as possible. Great question, Mitch. All right, so Richard Posner asks, it's crazy, all the angles of diet, people are different. I have lost 100 pounds in a year using my intuition and grains of truth from experts. Good for you, dude. Listen, I was 80 pounds over what I am now. Okay, I've gone up and down in my weight, and I was bloated and fat as F. Okay, I was definitely super out of shape, and I'm in amazing shape now, and I'm shredded now. And it didn't come from following the food pyramid. I'll tell you that. So cheers to you, Richard, for overcoming that. All right, let's see. Mitch asks, are you still on a diet of bulletproof coffee with one big clean meal? Yes and no. So I don't do the bulletproof coffee anymore for a couple reasons. One is on carnivore, you can't have the coconut oil. But I was trying just butter in the coffee for a little while, and right now my gut can't handle it. Don't get me wrong, I love my coffee, and I actually kind of hope I can get back to coffee because I love the way it makes me feel. But what I'm handling now is I'm learning new ways to make myself just as energetic without the coffee. So you guys can probably tell this is early morning for me. It's before 9 a.m. I've been up since 4 a.m. and I am just as energetic right now as I was at 4 a.m. and I'm going to stay energetic. And most of that is coming from taking care of my body properly, and it's also coming from taking care of my mind. When I feel down, one of the first things I do is I get up and I move my body in a way that's going to generate energy out of nowhere. You can pull energy up out of your gut. You can reach deep down inside yourself and pull energy out. We all know we can do this. We all know about the second wind that happens in sports. We've seen guys in fights who are just beat down to nothing, and that something happens. They pull something out from inside themselves and they pull that energy out. You can do that for yourself on a day-to-day basis. And part of that is from the way you think, and part of that is the way you move your body. Okay, so an experiment you can try is, this is something that a lot of the NLP guys, and I know Tony Robbins popularized this. It's a really beautiful experiment. Go to the mirror and smile like you're crazy happy. And as you got that smile on your face, try to be mad. And you're going to find it's not possible to feel mad when you have that big smile on your face. And that smile is important because when you feel positive energy, you are lowering your stress levels. And if your stress levels are low, that means your energy can be higher. Stress will deplete your energy stores. So a lot of people will come in and be like, oh, I don't want to be happy, smiling all the time. Well, the alternative, I mean, if you're down and you're angry and you're bitter all the time, I promise you, you are not going to have as much energy. Verge says, how much of your time is split between work and health/working out and the rest of the things life entails? Well, first off, let me give a caveat here. I'm not a parent, so I'm in a situation where I don't have the same level of responsibility that you do. For me, health practices and work and everything else, I see all this stuff as being together now, right? So fewer and fewer hours of my life are spent now doing things like, lounging around in front of the tube. I don't see that as my leisure activity anymore because most of the stuff I see on TV I know is negatively affecting my mind. Okay, it puts me in a lower mood and it puts you in a trance and it brainwashes you. There is product placement in the entertainment that we're watching. I believe that there is messaging placement inside the entertainment that we're watching. Now, if you think that that's conspiratorial bullshit, believe me, you're wrong, guys. Go look at the history of De Beers and how they paid Marilyn Monroe to sing that song, Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. How they created the cultural norm of giving your fiance a diamond engagement ring. That was not a phenomenon until De Beers created that, and they deliberately placed information inside popular culture to change your thinking about that. Okay, so my leisure activity does not involve those types of things anymore. My leisure activity now is spent on things that I know are improving my life. Okay, so I'm either going to be playing music or I'm going to be doing work, which I am constantly brainwashing myself to love more and more. I used to have an aversion to work until I switched the way I think about that. I don't go in and think of work as something that I got to get over. I see it as a joyful thing that I am experiencing that is part of my life. Because if you separate work and life, that means that 8 to however many hours of your day every day that you're spending on work are now are sacrificed. Okay, but you're still alive. So if you teach yourself how to enjoy and love your work, you can get joy and pleasure, throughout the day. Now, my normal routine looks something sort of like this. Okay, so I get up usually around 4 a.m. I bang out some hard creative work then because that is the best time for me to be focusing my energy on hard creative work. And then around sunrise, about 10 minutes before sunrise, I will get out there and I will do some flows and some different movements that I do. I have a strict morning routine that I follow. And then right as the sun is rising, I'll do some breathing practices. I do this thing called breath of fire, and then I do Wim Hof breathing. Okay, and then after that's done, I feel amazing. I feel amazing and then I get up and I do my Wake Up with Mark Joyner video, and then I do a little bit more work, and now I'm going to start doing these Ask Mark Joyner videos probably around this time, depending on how people respond to this time of day, all right? And then I get back in and I start doing some more work. And by the way, you'll notice I haven't eaten anything yet. I haven't eaten anything yet. I'm only going to eat one meal a day. Sorry, I'm looping back to the other question before. You asked me if I was still doing Bulletproof Coffee and one meal a day. I am doing one meal a day still, okay? And so when do I get my leisure time, my relaxation time? Well, right around sundown these days, I'll usually put on my blue blocker sunglasses because I don't want the artificial light disrupting my sleep pattern, something you guys can Google and find out about. It's helped me out tremendously. Again, watching the sunrise, getting sun throughout the day. Oh, by the way, midday I get sun for anywhere between 40 minutes to an hour, and I will listen to a book on tape, or I will meditate during that time. And I'll work up until around the sun starts to go down. And then I'm going to start, hanging out, having some fun. I'm going to play some music, might chit-chat with some friends, something like that. And then by around 8 p.m., I'm in bed, get ready to sleep because I want a full good night's sleep. Now, there is a price for this. There are a lot of social events that I have to sacrifice. People are always inviting me out to go out at night. And I used to say, oh man, I gotta go out and do that. I'm gonna miss out. Well, I don't care anymore. I can hang out with people during the day. And if I don't have time to meet them during the day, well, maybe I'm not going to have a chance to meet them. It's more important for me to get a full night's sleep so I can be optimal throughout the day because I love feeling amazing throughout the day. That's worth way more to me than any kind of pleasure I could be getting at night. Well, you might read that sentence the wrong way. Not the way you think I might mean that. Certainly not implying that. But I don't need to go out and drink. I don't need to go out to clubs. I don't need to go out and watch a movie late at night. I don't need to disrupt my sleep until 10 or 12 at night and then sacrifice my performance the next day. That stuff is not important enough. Hope that answers your question. All right, so Richard asks, let's see. Oh, all right, good stuff. All right, so Richard asks, time for a long bike ride. Glad to have a reconnection with you and your fervent mind and actions. You are a valuable asset to the tribe beyond. Thank you, buddy, for the kind words. And I'm going to leave it at that, guys. This is a really good session today. I didn't think we were going to get too many questions coming in because it's Sunday night, but I really appreciate you guys hanging out and having fun. I'm going to be doing this more often. I'm going to be doing this probably 4 or 5 times a week now, probably around the same time. If this time works out, I'll keep it consistent. I like doing it around this time because it works for my schedule, but I do want to get the most live engagement as I possibly can. Obviously. And by the way, we're going to be doing a lot of really fun stuff about this. And guys, don't be afraid to ask me questions about marketing either. I still know a thing or two about marketing, and I know most of you guys are asking me about health, but I'm completely open to answer any question you guys have at all on any particular topic. And you guys drive the train. You guys tell me where to go. This is for you. It's you asking me questions, so I'm not going to dictate where that goes. All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out. I had a blast. Seeing y'all, and hopefully I'll see you guys on the next one.